Hello, I'm Dr. Bill Wyatt. I'm a general dentist who has done nothing but orthodontics for the last 42 years, and I did a good bit of it prior to that before I finally just quit doing nothing but orthodontics. Now, I also mix a lot of the TMJ problems in with orthodontics. You can't separate them from it. So we've done that also. And this afternoon I'm going to try to go through a surgical orthodontic case that we had years ago. And we started it off with a young lady who had a very severe crowded problem and slide class 3, and we were able to correct it and get everything going good. And normally young ladies don't grow into class 3 later on like young men do. But in this particular case, this young lady grew into a class 3 later on in her teens. And I want to just show that to you. You need to understand that, though, when you're doing class 3, especially on young men. You might correct a class 2 problem when they're 12, 14, and then when they get 17, 18, or 20, they will grow into class 3s. And you could have left the class 2 alone and it would have gotten better down the line. I've had cases like that. So let's get in and see how this does now. This is the young lady. This was a long time ago, and my slides were got pretty old before I got them used. They got a little fungus on some of the slides, but you can see them okay. Now, we started out with this young lady, and she had a very crowded situation. This is after we corrected a lot of this, but here's the models and everything before we started. This was back in 72, I believe, and it's very crowded. Now, this was pretty badly messed up. This was 6 of 72, but you can see it. And on this side it looks pretty good, but it's a class really it's crowded, and it's slightly class 3, not bad at all. So it wasn't very difficult for me to correct it, but it was a slight class 3. So I very wisely, I don't know how that happened, but I told them that it might grow worse as she got older, not thinking that it would at all, but it actually did in this case. So here we are, just a slight class 3, and we came in to do this case back in the 70s. Extracting teeth was nothing at all, you know. We used to take a lot of teeth out that we wouldn't take out today. But anyway, there we are, and this is totally banded case. Now, we didn't use any brackets up till about 74, somewhere in there. We gradually shifted over to them. And this is the lower arch. It's mildly crowded, but it is crowded. These are two deciduous molars, you see, and the cuspid's coming in down here, and we've got a deciduous cuspid over here. These will have to shift over, and so in the crowded situation we come in and take out her first bicuspids if I remember correctly here. Okay, here's in her mouth, and this is, we didn't do anything till 73, and she came in, and so they were kind of hesitant to start when she looked like her models did back in 72, but in 73 they realized they were going to have to do something with it, and so we came in and took some models, and we took some x-rays, and Then we took out the first bicuspids on the case, and we were able to treat the case and came out with it looking fairly good. And I think this was the self after we had treated her earlier on. And there's the first Panorex, I think, when we took and recommended taking these first bicuspids out earlier on down the line. That was our first Panorex when we started, and we moved those teeth together, and it gave us enough room where we could straighten the teeth up and got her in a pretty good class 1 relation. Now this this young lady was referred to me by a dental friend over in another part of town, and she was in his practice, of course, and he sent her out, and I took care of her problem and everything, except we didn't do anything with her wisdom teeth at the time being. And very unusual, this young lady started going with his son started going with this lady, young lady, and I think later on they were going together at the end of high school. I don't know in college or not, but anyway, we straightened it all up and it looked good, and everything was going fine. And then as she got later on down in high school, he called me up one day and says, well, she's getting class 3, says her jaw's coming out too much, and you're going to need to do something with that. Well, luckily I had told the parents that it's possible that she would have to have surgery, and sure enough she did. But this was an unusual case. Now we've got her in just regular old bands and everything. This was in 74, I think. We still had not changed over at that point, and so we lined it all up and started in, and it just wasn't doing good, so we sent her in to a surgeon, and he checked it over and said they were going to have to operate on it, and so we did. I could not pull this thing in line with the class 3 elastics, and so the surgeon, we were pulling the midline across there, see, and the surgeon was a pretty good friend of mine that I had done some other surgical cases with him. In fact, I scrubbed in with him on one or two of these cases. I don't recommend doing that, but and so anyway, we ended up setting her up to do surgery. And let me show you what the surgeon wanted me to do. Now we had it looking pretty good, but it just grew out too much, and so he recommended we closed all this space up and everything. It looked pretty good, and then she got worse, and so we had to come back and set her up. Now her jaw, see, is moving out now, and so he calls me and says, well, she's going with my son, and he wanted me to get her fixed up. So anyway, we'll look at it, and here's the way it was looking after the surgery. All right, we sent her into the surgeon, and he took a lot of records and everything, and I'm going to show you those right quick. We won't take much time on here. The thing I wanted you to really understand about these class 3s, if you try treating them young, warn them that they can grow out from under you when they get now boys are notorious to do this. 17, 18, I've had them grow out when they were 21 years old, go off to college, and you'll have them treated really nice, and they'll become class 3s later on down the line, especially if there's anybody in the family that's got that class 3 problem. Now, girls don't normally do this. This is the only one I've ever had. But this young lady was really good in her mathematics, and she was kind of a tomboyish type girl. And I guess she had some male hormones in there that kind of added to the jaw growing out like this. But it certainly did come out when she got in her teens. So this is something you want to watch out for. Not too often do young ladies do this, but young men do it very frequently. So here's what they were going to do is take that jaw down, and I'll show you what the operation was. We've got a picture or two here of the operation and how they bring the jaw back underneath there. Now this is what the oral surgeon had planned, and he showed me kind of what he did. He takes the maxilla loose and shortens it and then wires it back up. They did then. Now they've got plates they put on there, and then they section the jaw here and then slips it back and wires it. Her chin was back in, too flat here, so he sectioned it off here and advances the chin and wires it in position there. So there's 3 places, well actually 4, on both sides of the jaw and the maxilla and the chin. So there's 4 places that they go in. This is no plaything. I mean, it's a serious business taking these, correcting these class 3s, and they tend to relapse to some extent too. So you have to watch them very carefully. But that's where they did the operation. They took the maxilla loose and shortened it and put it back up. And they sectioned the jaw here and slipped it back and wired it together here. And they wired the chin button, or this is what they call a genioplasty, and gave her a little chin structure, and it makes a tremendous difference in her looks. Now you can see how the chin looked after they got through. The maxilla was looked before you saw a lot of gumminess in her smile. Now you don't see it, you see. And then the chin was too flat off down here, so he brought it out and gave her a nice looking chin right here, and reduced the vertical height of the face also by reducing the maxilla. Okay, here are the things. You can go through this as slow as you want to and read these things, how they told us what they were going to do and everything right here. Here she is. She's 17 years old right now, and she grew out when she was about 16 or something like that. We started seeing it then, and the dentist that referred her back, and we had to come back and do the surgery. I didn't do the surgery, of course. The oral surgeon did that. And here's the other thing, is treatment, what we're going to do, the Lefort osteotomy and stuff like that. All right. The surgeon, when he got ready to section these jaws off, he had me take my arch wire out and put these little brass hooks on it. And you had to learn how to solder these brass hooks on your arch wire while it was still, you didn't want to anneal the wire either. But I got pretty good at hooking these little brass hooks on, and this particular surgeon showed some of my surgical cases that we had done with him in New Orleans one time at an orthodontic surgical meeting. And I remember he told them who had done the orthodontics, and I was really proud of that. But we put those arch wires in there with those little hooks, and then back then they would come in hook elastics. Now when they close this, they may put it together where they can take it apart, but they don't hold your jaw steady in there now, because the fossa, you've got a kind of a fossa like that, and the condyle, if you wire it up in there where it's tight, the disc or the tissue between the two bones there doesn't get any circulation, and it'll die during, say, 4, 6, or 7 weeks or whatever it is they keep them wired together. Now they want to loosen it up and move them around, so they wire the jaws separately, and they can move them from time to time and get a little circulation in this tissue, keep it alive. Back then they wired the thing together. Okay, that's the little hooks you put on. So if you're a general dentist or a pediatric dentist, you want to work with a surgeon, they're happy to work with you if you just can do the orthodontics. They don't care whether you're a general dentist. If they know you can do the work, they are happy to work with. I've never had one gave me any problem, and I've worked with probably maybe 10 or more oral surgeons over the years, and done cases with them. But I really don't like to do them. If I can do it without surgery, I sure like to, because it's a pretty gory thing. We'll show one picture of her operation here. Now the surgeon usually takes the models and everything, and then he'll section them and do just what he's going to do prior to the surgery, or they did back then. Now here is a few pictures of the surgery that we've got. Now they section the tissue off, peel it back up here, then they cut the bone structure supporting the whole maxilla, and the maxilla will just be hanging down on the tongue down here, held on by the tissue in the back of the palate. It has to get its blood supply. Then they section this off. I remember my first time to see this, oh my God, they opened right into the sinus. They just cut the side out of the sinus, take the nasal septum out, except on that one gut one, they left the nasal septum and just cut it all the way around the side, and picked up the outer part of the maxilla and pushed it up and wired it. So they'll shorten this a good bit. I remember one week, it seemed like they took 10 millimeters off of the bone structure in here. You just would hardly know this lady. She had such a high angle in there. But they'll take that tissue off and then bring this up, and back then they wired it up. Now they put the little plates on there and screw them in the bone. Now let's go on, and here we are after we finish. Now you can see the genioplasty where they move the chin button out here, and they wire that on, and the jaws we'll show in another picture here. I think you can see them where they're screwed together. I'm not certain whether we show them, but they wire the jaws back in here and then tie this up in this part. In other words, you shorten the mandible, you reduce the maxillary height in here, and then you lengthen the chin down at the bottom on a case like this. There are 4 areas that you do surgery, and this takes most all morning for them to do that. I've scrubbed in there, went in at 7 and got out about 12:30 or 1, something like that. Okay, here it is, and here's the result of this surgery. this is the profile when you looked at her prior to this. Her maxilla was down here, had a gummy smile, her lips too short, and this watch, and they were going to bring her chin button out just a little bit here to make that look nicer. And here is her profile after we got through. I mean, she's a good looking gal. Now look at the facial height. It's too much. If she really smiles big, you see a lot of gum tissue there too. Now we come in here and they do the surgery, and that's the facial height. Just a lot nicer looking lady to do this. And now we look at the gumminess of the smile, and here is the smile after we got through. She went off to A&M, and I'm sure she was quite popular young lady, and she was good at mathematics, and I don't know whether she went into engineering or what she went into, but she had a few extra male hormones in her, I think, that caused it to grow out after she got in her late teens. And I think that's my last picture on her. So the thing that I want you to remember on this type of case is that warn people when they come into you to correct these class 3s. If you see anybody in their family that's got a class 3, and I rarely ever saw anybody that was class 3, there wasn't somebody that you warn them that they can grow out later on, and then they have to go back through orthodontics and back through the oral surgery and all this mess, and it's expensive. And that part of it is really expensive. If you do orthodontics early and at 12 or 14 you're finished with it, now you've got to go back and do it all over again. Your children don't like it either. Nobody likes it. So, but tell them about it. It can grow out. Young men, very susceptible to it. I've had a number of young men that grew out, and I had it nice in class 1 when they got through about 12 or 14 or somewhere in that area. But you have to come back and do this surgery, but usually they're from 17 to 21 or 22 when you get back in there, but they grow out. But this looks real good, and her smile here, and her, well, that's not much of a smile there, let's see, but she had a good smile. That's her smile, and that's the end of it. So I appreciate you watching this video, and if you get something out of this, just remember, if you treat a lot of class 3s, look at who they came from, their blood parents. I can't really remember any patient that had a pretty good class 3 that there wasn't somebody down the line. I had one time that nobody in the family, except they brought me their picture folder, and her grandfather on her father's side looked just like her. So it had jumped a whole generation. Now, if they've got a lot of this class 3 gene in the family, this may happen. So just warn people, let them know, and write it down. Because if you mess around there and correct the class 2, and then the thing grows into class 3, if you'd have left it alone, it might have grown from class 2 into class 1 instead of class 3. So I'll hang up and hope you get something out of this. That's the only case I ever had that had a young lady grew into class 3 like that. So I'll hang up here and we'll stop this. Thank you a lot now. Bye.